Holiday doesn't care, one way or another. The alternative is we're going to take the risk. What happens is the document's weird.
Welcome to the April 12th, 2021 meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. Prior to tonight's meeting, we'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Twine, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, truly, we thank you for coming before your throne of grace again. We always ask for your grace and mercy. We thank and praise you for the wisdom and guidance that you provide us each and every day. And we ask that you will continue to do that. And these blessings we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Briggs, will you call the roll?
Yes, President Brady. Ms. Twine?
Here.
Mr. Meinzer?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here,
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
make a motion to excuse Commissioner Murray.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, Mr. Murray is excused. Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of March the 22nd, 2021. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the March 22nd meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Once again, we're holding this Sandusky City Commission meeting electronically and in person. Commissioner staff are in attendance through an internet hookup in a variety of safe locations. We've asked our audience to either submit their questions or comments in writing to our commission clerk, and we'll answer those that pertain to legislation as that legislation comes before us tonight, as well as provide a response to other audience questions from the appropriate staff. I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that those participating in this meeting are doing so with the proper distancing and face masks. Ms. Briggs, are there any questions from the public that pertain to tonight's agenda?
Yes, President Brady. We have one comment for tonight's agenda. It is a three-part question. It comes from Tim Schwanger of 362 Sheffield Way in Sandusky. He said, regarding items 3, 4, and 5, the Jackson Street Pier project appears to be transforming from a waterfront improvement project for the community to a business and economic-driven project. Stage and LED screen concerns. He said the city of Sandusky spent millions to develop the Paper District Marina and amphitheater projects for events. This particular amphitheater was built with future expansion in mind. The Paper District Amphitheater is well removed from the Chesapeake Bluffs, reducing noise level concerns when compared to the Jackson Street Pier. In regards to the ice rink, he said the city of Sandusky celebrates the Christmas season with a tree lighting ceremony with 2 months of festive lights and displays in Washington Park. To facilitate celebrating the Christmas season with lights and displays, a much better location for an ice rink is in or near Washington Park. Winter winds coming off Lake Erie make the Jackson Street Pier a less favorable location.
Those questions will be addressed as we get to that specific legislation. I think it's our legislation numbers 3, 4, and 5, I believe. Commissioners, you have before you several communications from staff regarding various legislation. Can I have a motion to accept these communications?
So move.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Wow, tonight we're paying the price for being off for 3 weeks. We have 14 consent items to consider this evening, and I believe 9 regular agenda items, so we will get to it. Commissioners, do any of you wish to move any of these items to the regular agenda? Ms. Briggs, will you present the consent agenda?
Yes, President Brady. I did have some slight computer issues, so I'm not able to bring that up on the screen. I was just trying. So if it's okay, I will read them, and I'll read them slowly and well.
That'd be great.
Consent item A is for disposal of the Chronos time clocks and it is the second reading. Item B is for the submerged lands lease payment for the Chesapeake Lofts. Item C is an agreement with Wonderware North for support and maintenance services with SCADA software. Item D is permission to apply for grant to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for the fire department. Item E is permission to apply for an Erie Metro Parks grant by the Sandusky Recreation Department. Item F is a priority use agreement with the Travelers Baseball Academy for use of J.C. Park South. Item G is a priority use agreement with the AMVETS Baseball League for the AMVETS Park in Erie Blacktop Field. Item H is a priority use agreement with Lady Lightning Fast Pitch for Dorn Park Fields. Item I is a priority use agreement with Panther Baseball Club for Kiwanis Park. Item J is an amending priority use agreement with the Sandusky Central Catholic School for Dorn Park. Item K is a permission to accept 3 parcels into the land bank program. Item L is an agreement with Erie County for Community Housing Impact and Preservation, the CHIP partnership. Item M is a new liquor permit for Paddle and Climb. And item N is a new liquor permit for Wake Up and Waffle.
Having heard these ordinances, resolutions, and liquor permit transfers, Commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move to accept consent agenda items A through N as in Naomi, and clearing that all ordinances and/or resolutions as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions, whether it be in accordance with Section 13 or Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Briggs, will you call a roll on the motion, please?
Yes, President Brady. Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. Now on the ordinances, resolutions, and the liquor permit transfers.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, those ordinances, resolutions, and liquor permit transfers are passed. We'll now turn to our regular agenda. Ms. Briggs, will you present the first item?
President Brady, item 1 is an ordinance declaring that certain 44 parcels of real property owned by the city as part of the land reutilization program identified and located in the Cold Creek Crossing subdivision are no longer needed for any municipal purpose, and approving a form of agreement for the purchase and sale with respect to that real property, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed? This is the point in time when someone.
I think this is
the motion.
second reading, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, we do not need a motion. We just move to the discussion phase. And
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meinzer?
I'd like to move this to the, take this off the table until next week if it's possible, or next meeting.
Mr. Meiser, that is a companion piece of legislation that
Okay.
that we put on the table. This is actually a different piece of legislation. This is legislation that deals with declaring this property to be sold. These 44 lots to be sold. I think what you're referring to, Mr. Meiser,
Yeah.
is a companion piece of legislation that may be appropriate for that motion later in the discussion.
Yeah, we passed
Did it-
Tony on the first reading to be the agent.
What did what was his motion?
His motion dealt with taking off the table
Oh.
the companion piece of legislation that
Okay.
gave Hody the right
I
to
got it.
sell.
I misunderstood him.
And so now we are in the discussion phase of the second reading of legislation that passed on the first reading regarding making the 44 lots available for sale.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
couple of questions about this. I'm not sure who can answer it, but there are some concerns with some of the property owners out there that parcels could be sold and basically any type of structure could be built there. So people are concerned about their property values, what can be built out there. So are there any parameters that will prevent someone from just, throwing up something that won't be comparable or better to what the properties or what that area out there was useful for? And is there a way that the city, say someone submits some type of building plans or whatever, and they're approved, but then those building plans change or something to that effect? Can somebody kind of speak to that?
Mr. Holliday, I wonder if you are probably the most appropriate person to speak to this. I know that you've had some discussions with me today regarding that, and I believe you've had some discussions with Commissioner Poole. I wonder if you'd just kind of put this in context for the rest of us.
Thank you, Commissioner, and through you to Commissioner Twine. The sales will be subject to a number of protections that will ensure the future outcome that we're all looking for there at Cold Creek. First of all, we are selling these properties subject to the deed restrictions that have been in place since the start of that subdivision. So all of the existing property owners had to meet those deed restrictions, and the future property owners will as well. In addition to that, we have the existing zoning requirements and building and housing code requirements that'll also be in place. Some of the properties on this list are multifamily properties, and those properties will have to go through the site plan approval process through the Planning Commission, and we're going to look at those very closely as well, as some of those properties are zoned for multifamily development. In addition to that, the sales prices that are being included here in this legislation are still very much market rate sales prices. So in talking through some of these concerns with the folks at HODI, one of the things they pointed out is that at these sales prices, we will still be attracting high quality builders and buyers that do have the resources in order to go forward with these projects. So there are a number of protections that have been put in place and that will remain in place in order to ensure those outcomes.
Okay, thank you.
Additional discussion, Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
I want to suggest that, the existing document with restrictions may not, I think what the existing folks out there are concerned about is whether or not the restrictions are going to provide the protections that match up with what they've done with their homes that are already out there. That document with restrictions is wide-ranging. The lots out there as platted are of various sizes. And although it is the original document, I would suggest that that the solution here is one that those folks have an opportunity to start their own homeowners association, and that we look at the current document to see if they want to make some changes to it to make it a better document and ensure that they maintain the high standard of housing that's out there. I think the existing restrictions are not very tight. It's just a matter of the luck of the draw and the attentiveness of the previous developer to ensure that the homes that have already been out there are extremely nice, high-quality homes, but that document, if you look at it closely, I think it's got some room for some wiggle room that we need to work with the folks in that subdivision to ensure that they are protected. And the first thing is giving them the opportunity to decide, because there's 50 of them out there now, they'll have to decide on their own if they want to have a homeowners association. And for us to sell, I don't want to sell the lots out from under them. Mr. Holliday and I have spoken, and for commission, I would say that to not do this first, that we take a risk, because it turns out, we're about to not have the kind of control that we probably should want. And I'm going to suggest that we table this for 2 weeks, specifically, to give Mr. Holliday a little more opportunity to network with the folks in that neighborhood, so that they're on board with what we're doing. And we can bring back both this and the companion legislation at the next meeting. It's not so much that this can't work as it is. It's such that we're taking some risk in that what the residents think they have in terms of protections, I'm not sure are as tight as we would want them to be. Thank you.
Mr. Poole, you understand it correctly, you've made a motion to table this legislation?
Yes.
As that motion to table is non-debatable, so I will ask the commission clerk to take the roll on the motion to table this legislation. Mr. Briggs.
Commissioner President Brady, point of order really quickly.
Yes, sir.
This is the law director. I just want to clarify exactly what the motion to table is for. Is it, Commissioner Poole, correct? Is it to table it until the next meeting so that it can be discussed and voted on at the next meeting?
It's actually to give us, the city, a little more time to get our ducks in a row, so that which is essentially Mr. Holliday dealing with the folks in the neighborhood to see if they want to have a homeowners association. Basically, after that, I think we can move forward with the project, and everyone would have done our due diligence in making sure that we're protecting their interests.
Sorry, my question was a procedural one.
Okay.
Specifically, I want to clarify if the motion is to table it only until the next meeting so that it can be voted on and potentially discussed at the next meeting. Otherwise, if it's tabled indefinitely, it can't be discussed for 2 meetings.
May I suggest, may I modify, there hasn't been a second, so I'll modify that to just simply tabling it. And then does that solve the problem? And then we just bring it back up if we choose?
No, I was hoping that you would specify that it would be tabled until next meeting, so that procedurally you could bring it up at the next meeting if you so choose.
Okay, no matter what, I was going to do it anyway. So, yes. The original motion is what I want, is what I'm going to propose it for 2, that we bring it, to be brought back up at the next meeting.
Thank you.
The object's not to prolong this.
A question that I have, and perhaps it is for the law department, or perhaps it's for Mr. Holliday, is you're suggesting that we enter into some type of arrangement in a homeowners association. Is that the role of the city?
I don't want to call it an arrangement. I want to say that we took over a development that the homeowners thought they had a homeowners association, or that the developer had put one in. There seemed to be some questions about exactly what is there. And I'm trying to avoid tying our hands, but I think we have an obligation, since we took it over, to carry this as far as legally we're able to, and morally responsible to those residents, and at least give them an opportunity, the ones that have already invested large sums of money, to at least have a say whether they want a homeowners association or not. That's the first step. And after that, we'll go from there.
Motion is on the floor to table the legislation. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meisner.
does this eliminate this kind of brings up some more discussion that I had in mind now that I heard this might be tabled. Are we allowed to go back to discussion?
I believe a motion to table is not debatable. I believe we have to vote on that motion prior to having a discussion on it.
Okay.
I'll turn to the law director for a clarification on that. Is that correct?
So there has not been a second to the motion yet.
So
if there isn't a second, you could continue to debate this item.
Okay.
If there is a second, then yes.
Then there's no
motion
debate.
Not debatable.
Great. Mr. Meinzer, go right ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to comment that I know a firefighter that is anxious to buy a lot out there and build a home. And he is being put off because a real estate agent has not been selected. And that'll be the motion that I'm going to ask that we take off the table for tonight. So in effect, it's gonna delay the selling of these lots anyway, and we have time to work out any deed restrictions or homeowners associations we want to. So I think that we all agree that these lots are going to be sold and at the city, and I don't think prolonging that thought is going to matter that much. But I do know that the city is not selling them because we do not have a real estate agent picked out yet.
And through the commission president, if I could just make a brief comment.
Mr. Webster.
I just want to say that there is nothing that has prevented or would prevent these homeowners from forming a homeowners association at any time. In fact, going back years in these conversations, we've encouraged them to do so for basic maintenance and other purposes, particularly for the purchase of some of the common area parcels that are not meant to be built on, but provide stormwater. And they've been reluctant to do so. And that I share Commissioner Meinzer's viewpoint that we've already delayed significantly our ability during what is currently a strong housing market, and that there are deed restrictions that are already in place that protect these individuals' investments, that it is unnecessary to continue to delay this, and we'd encourage you guys to vote on it tonight.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Twine.
I guess I understand the information that Mr. Holliday provided in reference to the deed restrictions, parameters for building structures and things like that. And I also understand the fact that there may be some people out there that are currently living there that want to create or develop or institute some type of homeowners association. So I guess my question is kind of to the fact, do we need to postpone voting on this legislation if there are homeowners out there that are currently out there that want to explore creating a homeowners association? I'm kind of wondering how that ties into what we as a commission or the city can do to, again, prevent them from developing a homeowners association, then holding up the legislation.
I think we're getting into some very muddy waters when you talk about organizing a homeowners association or participating in that. I don't believe that that's a role of the city. I do believe that there are restrictions that are already in place. They have square footage restrictions in place. They have single-story, two-story properties in place. They have multifamily restrictions in place. And we have building codes that we're following. I think to slow the process down now or to participate in developing a stronger or a homeowners association at all, we're going to find that we're still talking about this next fall. This is not something that you're going to bring all the property owners out there together in a 2-week period. So I'm inclined to oppose slowing the legislation down. I'm aware of the restrictions that are there. I believe that people have built beautiful homes out there. And I think that for them to strengthen their homeowners association is entirely up to the homeowners. I don't think the city should be engaging in that kind of activity. Additional discussion, commissioners? We have a motion on the floor to table this legislation. Do I have a second?
I think mine did. Mine seconded, didn't he?
No, I don't think you did.
Didn't he? Oh, I thought he did.
I do not hear a second to table this legislation. Therefore, that motion dies for lack of a second. We'll return to the legislation now. Discussion on the legislation. No further discussion. Ms. Spriggs, will you call the roll on the motion, or excuse me, call the roll on the ordinance, please.
Yes, President Brady. Ms. Twine.
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer.
Yes.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Poole.
No.
Mr. Harris,
I'll be abstaining from this due to my business relationship with the potential broker.
Mr. Brady,
Yes. That ordinance is passed. Ms. Spriggs, will you present the next item, please?
yes, President Brady. Item number 2 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $22,500 through the Housing Development and Beautification Grant Program to Case Development LLC in relation to the property located at 409 West Water Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for this adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
this is the property down on Water Street, right, with condos?
Right behind Chesapeake.
And I'm sorry, what exactly are they buying with this?
Through the commission president to Commissioner Poole, this is Debbie Eversole.
Yeah.
This is merely phase 3 of Case Development's development project. And this is for the 3 carriage houses that are going to be on the Shoreline Drive area. And I do have, some older pictures that we presented in 19 when this first came about. We had phase 1 in 19, phase 2 in 20, and then phase 3 is current. So let me attempt to share these for you. So basically, it's where the Keller site was. I'm using my cursor here to try to be a pointer. So here are the site plan. So phase 1 was the eastern portion. There were 5 townhouses individually parceled. Phase 2 is in process now, and that's the western portion. And then phase 3 are 3 individual townhomes. This is the Shoreline Drive view of this. 3 individual townhomes. So
Okay, we're
these will be
good.
closest to water. Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Eversole, we are in providing the $7,500 per unit or for 3 units. We're not doing anything for this developer that we wouldn't do or are not doing for other developers. Is that not correct?
That's correct. The only difference between the first 2 phases is this is 3 units instead of 5. Therefore, the amount is 22.5.
I am thrilled that they not only are coming out of the ground, but they're actually being sold. And this is, it took us a long time, and it was extremely painful to deal with that issue on the Keller building. I think we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in opportunity lost before we finally got that on the ground. Do I miss the water tower that stood above? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
I think that we are certainly going in the right direction with what's happening there with Mr. DeCesar, and I am solidly in favor of where we're going. Additional discussion, Commissioners?
If I might add one more comment, I'm sorry.
Sure.
They do have purchase agreements or purchase commitments for all 3 of these townhouses.
Excellent. Excellent. Ms. Briggs, will you call a roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine,
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
I'll be abstaining from this as well, please.
Mr. Brady,
Yes, and now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine,
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes. That ordinance is passed. Ms. Briggs, will you present the next item on our agenda?
Yes, President Brady. Item number 3 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to expend the funds for a purchase of a Stageline SL100 mobile stage from Stageline Mobile Stage, Inc. of L'Assomption, Quebec, Canada for the Jackson Street Pier, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. And I would ask, perhaps our city manager is best suited to speak to, I think Mr. Schwanger had questions on legislation 3, 4, and 5, and perhaps you could touch on all of those, Mr. Whoopser.
Through the commission president, if actually at all possible, I know that the commission clerk Spriggs has worked very hard on this. If she could maybe make a presentation on this, then I can supplement that to answer Tim's questions and some other comments, if that's okay with you.
Excellent. I would rather listen to Ms. Spriggs than you anyway.
Me too.
Well, aren't you all sweet? So up on your stage, up on your screen, I'm going to be presenting information and just some background information, as I know that the next 3 items are a bit random and have come out of the blue for some. But I guess if I could share that this has really been in the works basically since the end of 2018. During the bicentennial year, we really saw that the community is hungry for large-scale programming and that we have the capability to pull it off. I would also add that the Bicentennial Commission chose the Jackson Street Pier as a legacy project and dedicated any funds remaining from that year to go towards programming elements and infrastructure that would allow these unifying events to continue so that the community could get together at the same scale. You'll also know that programming is called out throughout my history here in my 6 years at the city, but it's been in plans, including the Bicentennial Vision Plan, specifically the destination city component of that, and most recently in the Downtown Master Plan, and was one of the top 10 priorities that came out of that plan. When we started having these discussions immediately after 2018 about, would our partners be interested in supplementing large-scale programming to ensure that it happened, many partners came to the stage and wanted to be part of this, so that we'll get to with the later legislation. But if I could also just add some programming information. It's not just about getting people together. Programming has a lot of underlying things. It creates a sense of community. It does stimulate economic development. There are best practices out there that say 250 days of programming can successfully sustain a community in a downtown. It also, throughout, I know numerous of your conversations, but ours at the staff level as well, winterization and how do we branch into the shoulder seasons often comes up as something that Sandusky is lacking. And with some of the infrastructure that we plan to bring, we would really like to enhance the programming so that it touches on all the seasons of the year. So with that, I'm going to show you that this is the stage. This is the SL 100 from Stage Line. We are purchasing or proposing to purchase a 24-foot by 20-foot stage. The setup takes 2 people in around 30 minutes once the staff, know the components of it. It's wind resistant up to 115 miles per hour and supports rigging of over 11,000 pounds. So that includes like the banner equipment you see, the lighting, the sound. The naming rights of the stage would be given to the Erie County Community Foundation for theirs and the Dorn Foundation's assistance in purchasing this. And the programming elements that would be attached to it, vary from live events such as concerts and ventriloquist and magic shows to, talent shows for kids and Battle of the Bands. It is really a very versatile piece of equipment, and it is mobile. Which is another one of the highlights. Something really special about the Stage Line brand is that it is one of the most highly regarded staging equipments in the industry. So Knowing what we're good at and what we're not good at, we really called on partners to help us vet all of the equipment that you'll see tonight. It was vetted by Steve Ernst, the Sandusky State Theater, and event producers in the Cleveland market, and all of them were very excited and were hopeful that we would end up going with the Stage Line brand. So that is the stage in item 3. And if you don't mind, if I can just quickly go through all of the amenities that we dubbed the Jackson Street Pier amenities package. Or President Brady, if you'd like, I can stop too.
No, I think it makes sense to let's, why don't you go through all 3 of them? Yep.
Okay. So the digital screen is next up, and that would be item 4. The LED screen that we are proposing is a 16-foot by 9-foot screen. It's enclosed in a trailer, which is very important because it will lengthen its life expectancy. It also rotates 360 degrees and is very portable, which means we can take it to the neighborhoods as well as attaching it one day maybe to an event with a stage. The naming rights of this would go to Firelands Regional Health Center, and the proposed cost is $130,000. Again, the uses attached to this are very versatile. Right now, a very popular thing is our Monday movie night. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't start until after sunset, which during the summer is after 9 p.m., and that makes it pretty not feasible for many parents. With an LED screen, we can show events during the daytime or really any time, and so it lends itself to a lot more uses in that capacity. So we'd like to continue the movie nights, but with an elevated series and hopefully starting at a time where more families can come. We can also show sporting events. We have an event right now with our Ohio State versus Michigan and running the street grid. There's no reason why we couldn't show, the game as well. And then I guess I would also add that this is really great because we can show our own videos that we have developed and logo sponsors when we are putting on events through the help of our sponsors. There are a few other amenities attached to this Jackson Street Pier amenities package that are included in the naming rights portion in item 5. The Jackson Street Pier Mylander Pavilion. The naming rights obviously would go to the Mylander Foundation. And this space is an event center that we are already seeing reservations throughout the entire season. It also lends itself so that it can be attached to winter programming and offer a warming shelter, small acoustic events such as, acoustic concerts and that sort of thing. And the city and the rec department is looking forward to heavily programming this ourselves. And then finally, the ice skating rink, which has gotten everybody very excited. I think there was a fight basically on the naming rights of this portion, but the ice skating rink would go to Civista Bank. The goal would be to program that from Thanksgiving Day weekend to Martin Luther King Day in January. So really providing, 6 to 8 weeks of great programming for our kids, especially as they are out of school during that time. And oftentimes what you see with winter programming and ice rinks, as we have talked with other people, is that a lot of people come down for about 30 to 45 minutes and then they go and get a coffee or they go out to eat together. So this is really going to be an economic driver for our downtown in the wintertime when it is our slow season. I would just like to point out that this has not had any sort of process yet gone into it. So the RFP would likely be issued in May or June. And our team, since this is a more complicated, venture, they're looking at rental versus buying and synthetic versus real ice. And then lastly, if I could just share that a handful of our partners wrote in and wanted to express their support for this. So Firelands said, Firelands Regional Health System is proud to partner with the City of Sandusky on the Jackson Street Pier amenities, including the LED screen and the Mylander Pavilion. This health-focused public space will be enjoyed by the community for years to come. Mr. Mylander would be smiling big if he were here today. That came from Jordan Sternberg, their marketing manager, and Dennis Schaefer of Civista Bank wrote, "It is our privilege to contribute to a community project that brings families, neighbors, and friends together to enjoy the city's waterfront assets in all seasons. At Civista, our mission is to improve the financial lives of our customers and to make a difference in the communities that we serve. We are honored to do just that with our gift and look forward to seeing the Civista Bank ice skating rink in action this winter." That concludes my presentation, and Eric and Brendan, feel free to hop in, and I can help answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Briggs. Mr. Whoopster, you have anything to add?
Through the commission president, I think Mackenzie did a really wonderful job capturing the how this came together and ultimately how powerful this can be. There's been a lot of talk, particularly during the pandemic. Obviously, the planning for some of this started pre-pandemic, but that the value of public space, not only as a community asset, but also as a driver of economic development, particularly when combined with programming, the type that will be made possible by things like the amenities that our sponsors and the Bicentennial Commission are making possible tonight, have the ability to transform and electrify a community while doing so in an equitable way through free programming that is made available to everybody. So I would offer that as an answer to Mr. Schwanger's first question, which was as to whether the pier is meant to be a public asset or an asset for economic development. And I think the answer for any good public space is that it is absolutely designed to do both, and that it already is doing both, which you can see from the investment being made in the downtown, or the including the sales of the townhomes that are very nearby, or the multiple buildings that have been reinvested in. But it's also critically and easily apparent when you look at the number of people on a day-to-day basis from all income levels and all ages that are using the pier on a day-to-day basis. And from the very outset of the planning for the pier, it was designed, as Mackenzie stated, with programming in mind. And in addition to that, was designed to be an economic development asset, which is why we're doing this where it is located, and why even in the absence of programming due to the pandemic, it's already been successful in attracting investment and visitors while improving the quality of life for the public in Sandusky.
Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
That'd be Commissioner Harris?
Yes. Just a quick question. Is it safe to assume that the stage would be made available for rental as a part of the pavilion if someone wanted to do so? Or is that just for city use only?
I think, and Mackenzie, or if I don't know if Jason Whirling is on tonight's call or not, who I know has been in the planning stages for this, can speak to that directly through the commission president. But I know that certainly we will not only be doing city events on the stage, whether that's done as a rental or through partnerships. They'd have to speak in more detail. And there is still time to figure out. I don't know if either Mackenzie or Jason to answer that question directly.
Through you, President Brady, to Commissioner Harris, there's been a lot of interest from our partners, such as the schools and other people, to use these amenities once we have them. I think, first of all, we would like to just get them and make sure that our staff is trained on it, and then we can assess things like the timing that it takes and how many people. But it should be those 2 people and 30 minutes. But as far as it traveling, I think we would like to take a year and probably figure out the logistics of it, but we do know that there's a lot of interest from the community to use it themselves.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
I think you're going to find, specifically with the LED and perhaps with the stage also, a little less likely with the skating rink, that you're going to find a way to deliver those products out into the neighborhoods, whether we target parks to do that. You could have cartoons shown on that, movies shown on that for kids on a Saturday morning. You can bounce around to any one of our 11 different parks. I see it as being a terrific asset to tie into the neighborhood and to pull the neighborhood closer to us in this whole scheme of things. And honestly, the same with the stage idea. They are mobile. I think their big draw is that they are portable, and they are self-contained. I think the LED system is self-contained electrically, so I think it will run just as well at Orlando Pace Park as it runs on Jackson Street Pier. And I think you're going to find that now that you've built it, or hopefully as we buy it, that they will come. And I think it's going to be good for our entire community. Additional comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I want to circle back to something. There's a question about whether, like an either-or question, whether it's public access or economic driver. I think Eric said something that's really important to that, is that it's both. I don't think that we can sit here and just look at either or with a lot of these things that we're doing. One of the things that we do want to drive is people coming to our area for different types of events, activities, purchasing meals, drinks, taking advantage of our parks, our movie theaters, if this legislation goes through. So I think, one of the things as we sit here, and as Eric does what he does, and all of our department heads, a lot of this is yes, we want to enhance what's available to the local public, but we also want people to come into our community and enjoy what those events and those activities and those things that bring people to our communities. And some of those people will end up staying, building businesses, purchasing homes. So I think, a lot of times, especially as we move forward, sometimes our movement is so quickly to people that have been here for years, they don't understand sometimes some of these things that we do. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Sitting at this table, looking at these different types of ideas and things that we are trying to, one, enhance the public sphere for the people that live here, but we want others to be able to take advantage of that. And if that means that they're going to make some money, that just puts more money into our coffers, our taxes, and all. So I think there are ways of doing these things to benefit all that are involved. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Additional discussion, Commissioners? Ms. Spriggs, will you call the roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. That ordinance is passed. And Ms. Spriggs, will you present the next item, please?
Yes, President Brady. Item number 4 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to expend the funds for the purchase of a portable LED screen from LED3 LLC of Canfield, Ohio for the Jackson Street Pier, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioner, I've heard this ordinance. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Spriggs, I will be unbelievably impressed if you can tell me the pixel configuration of that screen.
Do you even know what that means?
And that, by the look on your face, I will withdraw that question.
Where's Stuart at? I do have it, but it is deep in a folder.
My only regret, as you could tell from my earlier comments, I'm completely supportive of this. My only regret is that my company did not sell this product to the city due to some arcane charter laws in the city that prevent me from ethically doing that. But we'll let that go for another day. Additional discussion, Commissioners. Ms. Spriggs, will you call the roll on this ordinance, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, and now on the ordinance.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, that ordinance for the LED screen is passed. Ms. Briggs, will you present the next item? And we will do those separately. I see there are a combination of ordinances. We'll do each of them separately with a separate motion and a vote.
Yes, President Brady. Item 5A is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a naming rights agreement with the Mylander Foundation relating to the pavilion at the Jackson Street Pier and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner White.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance 5-1 under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Briggs, will you call a roll on the motion, please?
Yes, President Brady. Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, and now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, that ordinance is passed. Ms. Briggs, you present item 5, number 2, please.
Yes, my apologies on the numbering. Ordinance 5-2 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a naming rights agreement with the Erie County Community Foundation relating to a mobile stage at the Jackson Street Pier and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 5-2 under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion, a second. Discussion. Ms. Briggs, will you call a roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, and now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, that ordinance is passed. Ms. Briggs, you present the next item, please.
Item 5-3 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a naming rights agreement with Firelands Regional Health System relating to a portable LED screen at the Jackson Street Pier and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 5-3 under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, just one question. Yeah. On the pier, where do you plan on putting this stuff to use it? Get just some concept of how this is going to look?
Low.
Through-
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ms.
Mr.
Briggs.
President, to Commissioner Poole. So all will be located just north of the Mylander Pavilion on the hardscape surface. So basically using the Great Lawn as the space for the audience, and they would be looking south.
Essentially, that's a plan for use, all of it. That's kind of how it's going to be. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Briggs, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. Now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. That ordinance is passed. Ms. Briggs, you present the next ordinance, please.
Ordinance 54 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a naming rights agreement with Vista Bank relating to an ice skating rink at the Jackson Street Pier and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I'll move for the adoption of this ordinance 5-4 under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Briggs, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, and now on the ordinance.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. That ordinance and the preceding three have all passed with our thanks to the Community Foundation, the Dorn Foundation, Savista, Firelands Regional Medical Center, and the Mylander Foundation. I learned a long time ago to never look a gift horse in the mouth, and I'm glad that my fellow commissioners believe in that same philosophy. We are more than indebted and more than grateful to these corporate partners of ours to step up to the plate with these kind of dollars, making these kind of donations. They go to great lengths to make us the city that we are. So thanks to all of them. Ms. Briggs, will you present the next item, please?
Yes, President Brady. Item number 6 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with Norfolk Southern Railway Company for the Sandusky Bay Pathway and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, if you're still with us out there, I wonder if you'd shed some light on the engineering of some railroad crossings in regards to the pathway.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. As you can imagine, with many things associated with the railroad, they like to do things their way and with our money. So as we move forward with the design of the Sandusky Bay Pathway, there are 2 locations that we will have crossings. The first one being Edgewater, and the second one being at West Monroe near Old Street or near the coal docks. Both of those locations, they will not allow our consultant or the city to do the design. So we have to hire the railroad's consultant basically, or pay the railroad to hire their consultant to do that design. That includes basically just some signal upgrades, electrical improvements, things like that. And a lot of times what they'll do is, if they already have the gate arms like they have at Edgewater, they will include gate arms like that into the project as well. They'll have some additional signage, maybe some pavement markings, those types of things. So we are required to go through the railroad for this design work. And then what we will do is incorporate it into the bid plans once we have a set of plans for construction purposes. So the agreement, the 2 agreements are attached to the legislation, and the total estimate at this point is $50,421.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Klein. Discussion, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
I have ridden my bicycle across both those railroad tracks multiple times, and it didn't cost anything. I'm having trouble figuring out supporting $50,000 just to design something to get over tracks that people have been riding bicycles over ever since they were there. I can't envision anywhere near sufficient bicycles crossing that to justify $50,000 plus another what, $75,000, $100,000 to add some kind of electrical things there. So make me feel that this is actually necessary and not a waste of taxpayers' money. These tracks are being crossed continuously now by people on bicycles, motorcycles, whatever, at both locations, so thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. President, with the pathway being dedicated as a separate multi-use path, and it's not an on-road path, this is going to be adjacent to the current asphalt roadway. Basically, what you'd have to do is end the bike path at the railroad right-of-way, force the bike, pedestrian, cyclist, whatever type of traffic that's using the pathway, force them into the roadway, and then back onto the bike path on the other side. So this is something that if you do want to have a dedicated path, they would not allow us to stripe that as a bike path unless we have certain parameters and infrastructure in place anyway. So even if you did use the roadway for that, they wouldn't, we'd still have to do some upgrades and improvements, but this is something that it's very important to them for safety purposes. Yes, you can always ride your bike in the roadway as it sits now, but if you're going to do a separate dedicated multi-use path, you have to have the infrastructure that they would require.
Mr. Klein, if I understand your comment on that or your thinking on that, we are crossing railroad property, and because we're crossing railroad property, we have to allow the railroad to do the engineering to get us across their property.
Yes, that's exactly true. We're not allowed to touch it. We're not allowed to pave up to the rails. We're not allowed to do anything. We would have to basically say the pathway ends and then picks up at the other side.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Klein. I understand that. You can see that that's what you're saying. Commissioners, spending $100,000 to re-engineer the way people are crossing railroad tracks that they're already crossing, in this case, especially for bicycles, I think is a waste of money. And bicycles go from bicycle path to the roadway all over the country. And this is, people cross those tracks daily. So I don't think we should, I think we should just live with what system gives us and spend the money wisely. I'm going to have to vote no on this.
Additional discussion, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meiser?
I was working tonight that the young ladies, Whiteman and Weaver, were across the tracks mistakenly behind a train that was stopped, and it cost them their lives. If we're going to do a bike path, multi-purpose path, I really want it to be safe as possible. My grandkids, kids might be using it. If there's anything we can engineer to make that crossing, especially on Edgewater, I mean, I can see Monroe Street maybe not needing as much, but that Edgewater track, there's train going both ways and they're going very quickly. And if there's one stop there and kids mistake it as there's nothing coming behind it, it's worth every bit of $150,000.
Additional discussion, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, just one last thing. The improvements we're putting in are not going to prevent people from going around the gates as happened in that occurrence. So I don't mind if you want to vote this in, but not under the false suggestion that no one will be able to get across that track and be injured. That's not what's going to be done here.
Ms. Spriggs, will you call the roll on the motion, please?
Yes, President Brady. Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. That ordinance is passed. Ms. Spriggs, you present the next ordinance, please.
Yes, President Brady. Item number 7 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to purchase a 2022 Freightliner M2-106 cab and chassis truck from Valley Freightliner, Sterling and Western Star, Inc. of Parma, Ohio, through the State of Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program for the Water Distribution Division, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Briggs, will you call the roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. And now on the ordinance.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. That ordinance is passed. Ms. Briggs, will you present the next item, please?
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to purchase 2 2022 Ford F-350 trucks from Middletown Ford of Middletown, Ohio, through the State of Ohio Department of Administrative Services Cooperative Purchasing Program for the Water Distribution and Sewer Maintenance Divisions, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion.
Is he going to talk about this?
Yeah. Ms. Briggs, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. Now on the ordinance.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. That ordinance is passed. Ms. Briggs, will you present the next item, which I believe is a resolution?
Item number 9 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed 2021 sewer lining project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, just the next
Poole.
explanation of what they're doing for the public.
Mr. Klein, I know you've got a good explanation, and I think most importantly is if you would share with my fellow commissioners, as you share with me, how judiciously we're using the trucks these are replacing.
Sewer lining project. I thought we're in sewer lining.
I'm on the wrong.
Said 9.
Sewer lining project.
Yes.
They were on the last item.
Hey, you can forget about explaining about the truck that's already passed. It is an interesting story, but we'll keep it to ourselves for now. Tell Mr. Poole what we're doing with the sewer lining. That's fascinating.
Through the president, we will not be using trucks for the sewer lining. What we will be doing, though, is what the sewer lining is it's really considered a non-invasive type of maintenance for sewer infrastructure. What you have is when the pipes meet together, you'll have a joint at that location. You might get tree roots in there. You might just get a lot of excessive groundwater coming in through those locations. In addition, you also have the laterals for the different properties and the connections for those laterals. So that's another joint. So there's a lot of places where groundwater or tree roots or damage can happen, and that's very problematic on clay sewers. So what we've done in the past is we've done a lot of work on our lift stations. We've done a lot of digging sewers and replacing sewers. And we're trying to get more into those non-invasive, less costly sewer maintenance items that are the next tier of projects, which basically what you do is you take a liner, you put it inside the pipe, you blow up a bladder, and it creates a brand new pipe inside the existing pipe. And then they go back in and they drill out all of the laterals for the property owners. And in some cases, you can even put a 5-foot section of pipe up that lateral to seal that joint off as well. In the case of this project, we're doing just around 3,300 linear feet. We're doing West Monroe, Superior Street, and then as a precursor to hopefully being able to do a sewer separation on Warren Street next year as part of that project, what we're looking at doing is lining the sanitary sewer. Right now it's a combination sewer. We're looking at lining that, and then next year coming in and installing a storm sewer so that we can have a separation out there before we go into the construction of the pavement. We'll have all that underground infrastructure in place and up to the city's standards.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Additional comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, just one that this is a great project, and just wondered how much more sewer do we need to do over time?
Through the president, I don't know if we're ever going to have a situation where we're completely caught up with sewers, because our infrastructure, some of it's over 100 years old, and it's clay, and those old clay pipes are very problematic. The new plastic have a lot more integrity, but those clay pipes, you get one of those little fine tree roots in there, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and breaking it out. So, I mean, we could be doing sewer lining projects for a long time.
I think that's good. My basement not flooding is really a nice thing.
That's our goal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Briggs, you call roll on the motion, please.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes. And now on the resolution.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, that resolution is passed. That concludes our regular agenda. We'll turn to our city manager for his report.
Thank you, Commission President Brady, commissioners, staff, and audience. I will start with donations. And while I know that a lot of this was really well covered by Clerk Spriggs in her remarks and in the dialogue of the commission, I do want to formalize the $300,000 donation from the Bicentennial Commission. And really, I can't say enough about those who served on the Bicentennial Commission, as well as Executive Director Beth Maiden and the Erie County Community Foundation for serving as the fiscal agent of the Bicentennial Commission, for their leadership during the Bicentennial, and then their patience post-Bicentennial as we continued that account and raised dollars additional to support the legacy vision of the Bicentennial Commission to help make the amenity package available for tonight. So with that, I would like to thank them personally and also ask the commission to formally approve their $300,000 donation to us.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved with our thanks to those folks. Very generous donation.
Thank you. And then secondarily, the city has received numerous sponsorships for the upcoming Love Where You Live cleanup series. $200 sponsorship donations have received from Bowler Sheet Metal, Brady Signs, Underground Utilities, Frozen Tiki, Towboat Marine, Gunlock Sheet Metal, Flynn Pie and Cruise, H2 Properties, Luco, Vita, Fike Group, and Imagine Baking. We also have an in-kind donation from New Public Services for a dumpster, and we will be bringing one more batch of sponsorship donations to the next commission meeting, along with details to get involved in volunteer efforts. A huge thank you to everyone for helping keep Sandusky beautiful. Before I ask for a motion of that, I do want to thank Commissioner Waddington for his longtime leadership, dedicated to community cleanups, as well as on staff, Megan Stuckey from the Public Works Department, Kathy Spriggs, and many others who have really helped spearhead this event. So with that, I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So move.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Without objection, that motion be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Our thanks to all of those companies and to everyone that's involved in that literally on a week-by-week basis. I know the players in that cleanup change every week. The one player that never seems to change is Commissioner Waddington. He is there much like my mailman is. Rain or shine, Mr. Waddington is there, and the city is better for it. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Moving on to new and old business, starting with the police department. Sergeant Chris Denny was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and Officer Edward Olemaker was promoted to the rank of sergeant on April 1st. We'd like to congratulate both of them on their promotion and their hard work, and look forward to watching them continue to grow their new roles. For the fire department, a conditional offer of employment was made to a firefighter paramedic, Andrew Dowell. Andrew's a resident of Huron in Erie County. For the finance department, the filing deadline for municipal income tax returns has been extended until May 17th. With your health and safety in mind, we offer contact-free ways to easily file and pay your municipal taxes. Visit ritaohio.com for more information. Also, the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for April 16th, or this Friday at 8 a.m. Due to COVID-19, the meeting is not open to the public. It can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel. Moving on to the building department, congratulations to Deb Leslie, who is retiring from her position as permit tech manager for the building department. Deb has served the city for 34 years in several different positions, including during my first several and many before that in the HR department. Her last day of work is April 16th, 2021, and we want to thank Deb for her decades of service to the city. For the Public Works Department, in a continued effort to improve safety at intersections that have seen or will see an increase in pedestrians and cycles, staff is installing a four-way stop at the intersection of Hancock and Water Street at Facer Park, and a three-way stop at Water and Meggs. Sandusky was also named a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation for the 31st consecutive year. The city also received the Growth Award, which is given to communities who engage in new programs and projects while enhancing urban forestry services. Special thanks to Nate Limeister and Scott Cromer for their dedication to the urban forest during a particularly challenging year. Also, it's time to spring clean Sandusky as we get ready to enjoy summer and welcome back visitors. We're launching a new community cleanup beautification series, Love Where You Live, that we just spoke about, that will include the following events. Citywide cleanup and drop-off day will take place on Saturday, April 24th. For further details, call 419-627-5829. A clean welcome will take place on Saturday, May 1st, and volunteers are invited to help clean up the main corridors and arteries into downtown. A Love Where You Play will take place on Saturday, May 8th. Volunteers are invited to clean up neighborhood parks in preparation for summer programming. And neighborhood cleanups are taking place in various locations throughout the city every Saturday until October, thanks to Commissioner Waddington. And residents are also welcome to drop off yard waste at Barnes Nursery at 1630 Camp Road in Huron on Saturday, May 15th and Sunday, May 16th. For further information and details about these events, please visit our website or contact 419-627-5829. Additionally, water crews have commenced flushing fire hydrants. Periodic flushing of water mains is required to ensure high-quality water. Weekly flushing locations are available by a Public Work Construction and Service updates on the city's website. For questions, call the Water Plan at 419-627-5805. And then in coming weeks, the contractor on the West End Utility and Connectivity Project will place the asphalt pathway along the north side of Venice Road. The sidewalk between Mill Pond and Cold Creek on the south side has already been installed. Staff is still working with AT&T for permission to install banners on the utility poles. Staff also continues to prepare facilities and properties for the summer season. Water turn-ons for restrooms, bottle filling stations, and park fountains will begin next week. Also, crews at Oakland Cemetery will be conducting spring cleanup on Friday, April 16th. All items placed at grave sites during the fall and winter months will be removed, and no artificial flowers will be permitted for spring and summer months. And we were notified by Norfolk Southern Railroad, the crossing on Venice Road will be closed for maintenance and repairs from April 14th through April 23rd. Detour signs will be posted. For community development, the Land Bank Committee will meet on April 19th to discuss 3 proposals received for 421 Fulton Street. For the Planning Department, Arts and Culture Commission is scheduled to meet for Tuesday, April 20th at 5:15. The next Landmark Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 21st at 5 p.m. Next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 15th at 4:30 p.m. The next Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 28th at 5 p.m. For Sandusky Transit. Sandusky Transit is offering free trips to vaccination administration centers in Erie County. Riders can plan their trip on our fixed route buses by entering the vaccination center address in the trip planner tool at www.sanduskytransit.com. For those who don't live near a bus line, riders can schedule a dial-a-ride service by calling 419-627-0740 at least 48 hours in advance of their appointment. Also, STS will be running free service on the Yellow Line every 30 minutes from downtown to Cedar Point Sports Center for the Max Vaccination Clinic on April 22nd. And then finally, for Sandusky Recreation, the Sandusky Recreation Department Midtime Supper Club session, Season 3 staff and participants would like to thank everyone who supported last month's event. On March 10th at the Jackson Street Pier, almost 200 3-course meals were created, prepared, and boxed by our very own chefs in training under the instruction of Chef Katie Korobkin and Chef Brad Kraft. The event supported Sandusky's Rec Youth Scholarship Program. We look forward to bringing back the award-winning program next year with the possible of the summer iteration in 2021. The City of Sandusky Mills Creek Golf Course officially opened its 81st season on April 1st, although the weather has allowed an earlier off-season than years past. The Shamrock Scramble Golf Tournament was held at the course on Sunday, March 14th, and the staff has been able to open the course for several days already. Season passes and combo passes are available for purchase at the clubhouse during normal business hours. Sign up for league play or host your next scramble at the course this upcoming season. Those interested are encouraged to follow the course on Facebook or call 419-627-5803 for more info. And then finally, the Sandusky Recreation Department would like to thank the Rotary Club, Sandusky City Schools, including the Gentlemen's Club and Leading Ladies, the Sandusky Fire and Police Departments for their help in making this year's downtown Easter egg hunt a success. Over 3,000 eggs were hidden and spread out over the entire east side of Washington Park, with hundreds of children on hand to help find them on Saturday, April 3rd. That concludes my remarks for this evening, mercifully, and I am happy to answer any questions or take any comments from the commission. Thank you.
Mr. Webster, I am constantly amazed at your ability to deliver that kind of report while you're stiff-arming one of your 2 kids. I hope they're okay. Commissioners, questions for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman, I got one quick one for the city manager. On the cleanup at MacArthur Park on Saturday, I had 2 of the residents stop me right across from where we always had the temporary splash pad. I'm wondering, can we get that back up and running this year? I mean, is there any chance we can, I told them I would get back with this lady that I talked to.
Through the commission president to Commissioner Waddington, let me look into that right away with the rec department, community development, and public works. If we can do that, we absolutely will. We are also hoping to bring back or to begin later this year planning for the entire South Side neighborhood, which will include more permanent improvements, potentially a permanent splash pad for Churchwell Park. So we'll both look to continue the temporary option as well as planning for bigger picture improvements for that important neighborhood as well.
Thank you.
Additional questions for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Poole.
It's not a question. I realize that, staff plans their own schedule of what they do things, but waiting another week for them to open up the restrooms, I think just gives some secondary thought to that. If we've got time to put out pedestrian crossing signs, I really think that you just reconsider that maybe the bathrooms might need to move a little higher up on the priority. And I will point out that folks they still use the bathroom downtown, whether you open the doors or not. So appreciate it if you raise the priority on that.
Thank you.
Additional questions for the city manager, Commissioner? Not the next item on our agenda are items of old business. Any items of old business?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Meinzer.
There we go. Now we're at the point where I would like to pull from the table the legislation last meeting that we would address Hody as a real estate agent or broker of the lots at Coal Creek and put it on next meeting's agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Spriggs, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Yes, President Brady. I apologize. Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, that motion is passed, and we will expect to see that legislation 2 weeks from today. Any other items of old business, Commissioners? Items of new business, Commissioners? I have a housekeeping item here. I need to request a motion for a public hearing for April the 26th to review the draft budget for CDBG.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? Ms. Spriggs, will you call roll on that motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, that motion, that public hearing is set for April the 26th, 2021. We will look forward to seeing Ms. Eversole on that date. Additional items of new business, Commissioners. Ms. Spriggs, are there any communications from residents regarding city business to be read?
President Brady, we have 2 comments from residents tonight. The first comes from Sharon Johnson at 1139 5th Street in Sandusky. She said the Economic Incentive Committee was created by the commission to approve all commercial grants, including the signage and facade grants. About a year ago, the signage and facade grant reviewing and approval were removed from the ED committee and the job given to the development director with no authority to do so. The ED committee grant application process is open to the public with agenda, minutes, and documents of the grant application process. In order to preserve the transparency of the ED's grant process, I ask the commission to enforce their own legislation and place the signage and facade grants back to the ED committee where it belongs. How is it that staff can go against legislation set forth by the commissioners? The second is from Thomas Lamarca of 206 48th Street in Sandusky. He said there is a need for park benches or seating along Water Street near the Gallagher office and probably the new Visitors Bureau location. Apparently, we have numerous older people looking to sit down with nowhere on that side of the street or in the immediate area.
Thank you, Ms. Spriggs. I'd ask that Mrs. Johnson's question be delivered to perhaps Jonathan Holliday, our ED person, and perhaps our law director for maybe a combined response to share with Ms. Johnson how we got to the point that we're at, perhaps.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Holliday, do you have a response today?
Yes, I do, Commissioner, to
Excellent.
the resident. Since I've come on board, there have not been any signage and facade grants approved at the staff level. We have a really great Economic Development Committee group, and I intend to bring those requests to that committee. If there is an interest in changing that, I would first have to meet with the law director to determine if that's possible, and would certainly inform the commission if we did want to make that change in policy. But for now, I think that we've got a good group with the Economic Development Committee, and all signage and facade grant requests will be brought to that committee.
Good answer. Thank you, Mr. Holliday.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Commissioner Poole.
Okay, his answer is you're going to do what Mrs. Johnson wanted to be done, correct? She complained that you didn't take it to the Economic Development Committee, and now you're going to, correct?
Mr. Holliday, I think the question is, or the answer is, we just have not had those requests. That's why they've not gone before the committee. But under your leadership, they will always go before the committee unless that procedure is changed legislatively.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Lamarca's question regarding benches, City like ours never has enough benches. I agree with them, and as part of the older population, I would appreciate benches also, so I think that we will talk among staff and find out if there's a place to accommodate those, but thank you, Mr. LaMarca, for your suggestion. We'll follow up with that. Any other items, Commissioners? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.